All right, so welcome to today's presentation on using Ideate Style Manager to ensure your Revit templates and also your projects and families aren't old and crusty. I'm Sash Kazaminajad, and I'm the Customer Success Manager with Ideate Software. In addition, I want to let you know that my trusty colleague and friend Richard Taylor is on the line with us today. And Richard is going to be fielding all of your questions related to StyleManager. So feel free to throw your questions at him in the questions panel. Richard, say hello to everybody, please.
Hello, everyone. Don't be shy. So hope everyone's
Yeah,
having a good day.
yeah, Richard is definitely not shy, so don't be shy and go ahead and throw your questions at him. Okay, so this is a little bit about me. You can tell that I look a little different in this photograph versus how I look online at the moment. So I'm a customer success manager for Ideate Software. I'm located in our Portland, Oregon office. My background is in architecture, and I'm also a licensed architect as well. I've been with Ideate now for 7 years. Started off on the training and consulting side of things, mostly related to Revit and Revit workflows, and then migrated over full time to Ideate Software. So feel free to reach out to me at any point in time. My email and LinkedIn information is located on your screen. Always like to connect with people. So if you have any questions or want advice, definitely let us know. Okay, so for today's presentation, what I'll be doing is I will be focusing on Ideate Style Manager. You can see with the gray arrow down here that we'll be focusing on this particular product. Ideate Style Manager is one of 5 products that we offer for Revit. If you have not looked at some of our other products before, reach out to me and I'm more than happy to help you get started. Or you can also visit our website and download trial versions to get started. Again, we're here to help and answer any of your questions, so please let us know. Okay, so a couple of things here about StyleManager. The whole goal with StyleManager is we are looking at aggregating your essential graphic styles and also your visibility controls really into a single solution. So for those of you that have gone through Revit and have looked at object styles and try to figure out, where they're being used, if you've looked at line styles or even fill patterns or line patterns, whatever it may be, and you're trying to really understand where do these come from? Are they in use? Why is it that when I use the Purge Unused button, they're not going away? These are all issues we've run into for many, many years. And if you actually go on forums like the Autodesk forums and probably the Augie forums, you've probably recognized these questions or seen these questions, and you probably run into them yourself. Why can't I remove these? Where do these come from? And so what we're trying to do here with StyleManager is aggregate this information into one nice, simple solution so you can analyze these styles and really figure out where they're being used. And so that's what we're here to do today. We're going to look at how this product, StyleManager, can be used in your templates and also in your projects and families. And so the process that I'll be going through really works in any one of those interfaces. All right, so you've probably asked yourself this question before with your projects. Why are things such a mess, right? And I'd have to say with Revit, it's really a different animal than maybe say other programs where maybe you can copy and paste things in and transfer things in and not really have any consequences. Revit is not really that way. And for those of you who've been using Revit for many years, you've probably experienced a lot of these consequences. And again, the style list getting really long. And here's just a sampling of how things can get really sideways in your templates and in your projects and even in your families, depending on the situation. So, loading families or loading groups or even binding Revit files, the infamous importing of CAD files, right? And then exploding them, which really makes things, messy. Also transferring project standards, right? Those can also bring in a lot of extra and unwanted information from other projects. I also am throwing in careless programming. This is actually a really big one. If you are writing your own code or you're using somebody else's code, you can actually end up doing some more harm in your projects or in your templates than you ever thought you would. And I also put other in here because there may be other ways that styles, whether they be object style subcategories or line styles, find their way into your projects and in your templates. So my advice to you is when you are using any of these workflows over here, I highly recommend that you really be mindful about what you're loading up and what you're bringing into your projects. One advice that I have for you is, if anything, load that stuff up into a blank template file, do some cleanup, save it out, and then load it up into your projects and your templates. Otherwise, things will become a mess really quickly. You would sometimes think that Purge Unused can solve everything, and I will let you know that Purge Unused does not solve everything. And again, for those of you that have been using Revit for a long time, you've probably recognized that probably early on. So keep in mind that Purge Unused doesn't always remove everything. A lot of stuff had to be removed manually. Well, now we have a way to kind of help you with this task and make it much more efficient. Also, another thing we have to be mindful of, especially for those of you that are required to export, let's say, to CAD format. So maybe you have a deliverable that requires AutoCAD formats, or maybe other CAD formats for that matter. Again, if you have extra information in your projects and in your templates, this information, again, can carry forward. And even when you go to create your exports, now you also have this information showing up in there as well. So again, we want to be using a product like StyleManager at least on a weekly basis to ensure that your templates and your projects and your families are nice and clean. So keep that in mind. Okay, so how does StyleManager essentially work? And again, we're going to be demoing this here in just a few moments. I want to just kind of go through some slides here first, just to kind of prime you for this whole process. So the way it works is, we launch StyleManager, we pick a style, as we call it, from the list that you see on your screen, whether it's object styles or materials or whatever it may be, and we do an analysis. And when we do an analysis, we'll report back whether it's in use or not, and then we're going to tell you where it's being used. So for example, in this screenshot that you see here, I'm looking at plumbing fixtures clearance, and it's being used in 12 different situations, some families, some groups, and when I say groups, I'm also talking about placed and unplaced. So this is a nice way we can say, okay, this is where this information is used. If you've ever gone through the object styles dialog box and you go to delete a subcategory because you don't know anything about it, it just says, hey, are you sure you want to delete this? And the answer should always be, no, I'm not sure I want to delete this because you're not telling me enough information. But here we are telling you this kind of information. And then you can make an informed decision whether or not you want to delete it, or maybe you want to merge it. So then if you say, okay, you know what, I don't want to use this clearance anymore. It really should be Ideate clearance in this example, okay? Well, this is what I like to call the merge and purge, okay? As I mentioned before, Revit does an okay job at purging, but it really doesn't purge everything. Well, the nice thing about StyleManager is when you do your merging, we will also purge out that style as well. So in this particular case over here, I want to move this from clearance to Ideate clearance. So now I can take the same merge it and then select the style that I want, and boom, we're going to go ahead and merge that for you, okay? So that's a really nice way to do that. After we do that merge, that clearance will then be removed from your project. And then what about subcategories that aren't in use? So for example, for this object styles over here, we have several subcategories that are saying 0 usage, okay? Well, in that case, what we can just do is say, do I want them or do I want to remove them? Most of the times you're probably going to want to remove them, so I can select those elements that have 0 uses as highlighted in red over here, and I can remove them from my project. So don't forget the analyze, merge and purge, and delete. You also may, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but where does StyleManager actually work? In your project files, right? So this is a big use case for StyleManager, of course. Also in your templates. So I always encourage people, especially if you're managing templates and you are, let's say, continuing to do updates to your templates, be absolutely sure to use StyleManager when you're done to make sure that you didn't bring in any other unwanted styles. Again, it's really important to recognize that doing maintenance and cleanup, bringing things in, taking things out does leave residual data. So it's a good idea to do this cleanup work and this analysis using StyleManager in your templates as well. And then also in your Revit family files, okay? So again, StyleManager is going to report in your templates and in your projects if these styles are being used in families. doesn't hurt to go back to those families and clean up the styles in those families if you want to. And when I say that, I'm talking about the families that may be saved on your server. We'll do the cleanup for the project families, right? But if you need to go back to the actual source family file so that when others use those families in their projects, they're not bringing that unwanted information in, that's your opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to edit family and do some cleanup in there as well. So StyleManager works in all these interfaces. It actually technically works in family templates too. You know, if you're doing like RFT files, you can run them in there as well. But these are the typical scenarios where StyleManager works. Okay, I don't believe it's published quite yet, but I just wanted to give you an update. We will be publishing a new release of StyleManager here really, really soon. So I figured I'd give you some information before I get into the demo. We do have some new updated features for StyleManager. So we actually now show you a preview for your fill patterns. Also, the filled and masking regions have been kind of renamed from detail items within the usage per user input. So again, our beta program that we do with our customers has really helped us to get some nice feedback from people. And so that was a customer request. And also super embedded DWG imports that are nested in families. This stuff goes really deep. And so we are continuing to improve on StyleManager and open up new workflows. So those super embedded DWGs is another one. What I do want to point out to you, and Richard Taylor, again, who's on the line taking your questions, put together really nice what's new in Ideate software for our May 2020 release. I recommend that you go to our website. You can just come up over to the search box if you want to and just type in what's new. And be on the lookout for this video. It is already posted on our website. If you want to look at what's new with all of our products, I highly recommend that you check out this video. And he does talk about some of the updated features to StyleManager. So without further ado, let's just get into this demonstration here and just show you some of the ways that you can use StyleManager in your templates and in your projects as well. All right, so I'm going to switch over to my Revit over here. And I am using a Revit project for this example. As I mentioned before, you're going to want to run this in your template. The process is the exact same method. And again, we want to be running StyleManager in our templates from time to time to make sure that when people start brand new projects using your templates, they're not starting off on the wrong foot. So let's go ahead and click on the Ideate software tab over here. And again, as I mentioned before, we will be focusing on StyleManager for today. Okay, so here's the initial launch of StyleManager. One of the things I want to point out to you, by default, it actually launches on Home. I had launched it earlier, which is why it didn't start on the Home tab. One of the things I want to point out to you, first and foremost, if you're new to StyleManager, or you're just getting into it, or you've maybe loaded it and you're like, I don't know what this thing does, no worries. What I always recommend you do is start off on this Home tab and take a look at some of the information we have here, including our getting started guides. We also have an FAQ over here. You know, what does unused indicate, and what happens to the Revit elements, when that is used is deleted. We will give you all that information. We really built some great help files. We really try to help people out with our getting started guides. So if you haven't used any of our getting started guides in any of our products, definitely check them out. I think they're very straightforward and they'll help you with getting started. Okay, so let's have a first look here at the object styles. One of the things I want to point out to you is that these are the current categories that we are analyzing in Revit models using StyleManager. I always like to tell people we have some more space for other styles. So if you have any feature requests, please let us know. I'm going to show you where that stuff is located here when I return to the slide deck. But I would like to hear from you if you have other things you want to analyze. We have some stuff in the works as we speak, but I definitely would like to hear more from you in terms of what you are looking for. Okay, so let me just kind of point out a typical scenario here, no matter what style you are in, is a show. And what this is it's kind of a nice filter for your list. So for example, not analyzed will return a list of things that have not been analyzed. And we can see over here the checkbox or the question marks here really say these have not been analyzed yet. You can also then filter by used and unused, also built-in styles if you want to. Those are the ones that are hard-coded, object styles, and also imported styles. And what we're actually looking at here right now are the imported styles, okay? And so what I want to point out to you is this bold over here represents the main import. So for example, if you imported a CAD file, this is what we're talking about. And if I came over to, let's say, manage, and I came over to object styles, and I came to imported objects, we're really talking about this high level CAD file over here. You can see over here, door details.dwg. That's what we're seeing here. And then if I expand this, these are the layers that have come in, and that's what you're basically seeing over here as well. So in case you have questions about what this bold is, that's really what we're talking about. Now, we have kind of a separate category here for imported styles, and the reason why is we can analyze this, but most of the times we can't do any merging with this, and that's a limitation of the Revit API. And so a lot of times it won't let us do the merge, but at least you can do an analysis to understand where these are being used, so you can make an informed decision on whether or not you want to delete it out of your templates, out of your families, or out of your project files. So on a simple note, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to double click this DWG here in bold. And what we're doing is we're basically turning over every stone. We're looking for where the style is being used all over your project, whether it's in a view, it's in a part of a view template, you name it, we are looking for it. And we could see over here, there are 2 import instances of this DWG, and here's where they are. We also tell you down here that a merge is not supported. So as I mentioned before, merge is not supported here, but at least we can get a look and understand where this is at. What I can do here is I can select this element and say show. And one of the things I want to point out to you is that StyleManager is has a modeless dialog box, very much like Ideate Explorer, and that allows you to work with this dialog box open while you are zooming in and out or panning around. Take note that while I selected it and hit the show button, it is also selected here. So one of the things that sometimes I like to do is just isolate that element, and then I can kind of zoom in on it if I want to. And everybody probably recognized the famous architectural tick, but that's really what it is, okay? So again, these are those exploded CAD files that then have kind of sub CAD files, okay? So one of the things I just want to mention here is, again, this is a great way of analyzing, but in this case, we can't do a merge because Revit doesn't allow us to do that. So a manual cleanup is required in this particular example over here, okay? Let's see here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the rest of these categories here. Let me just go ahead and analyze them. So you saw earlier I double clicked to analyze. Well, I can also do a grouping of these and analyze them as well. And again, what I'm going to point out over here is we are now reporting to you where things are used. And what you can actually do here is you can uncheck used if you want to. And what that's going to do is it'll uncheck everything and just show you what's not used. And again, I can come back and recheck this if I want to. And the advantage of doing something like this is, just as an example, if I uncheck not analyze and let's say uncheck not used, what's really great about this is, now I can see all of these that have been analyzed that are not used. And if I need to delete them depending on the situation, I can absolutely delete them from here if I want to, okay? Let's just take a look here real quickly. I'm just gonna check these back again. So give me one moment while we kind of refresh over here. Okay, so there we have it. And if I take a look over here at, let's say, I just want to pick, I'm going to find like a detail wide. Let's see where that is. Where did that go? Give me one sec. There it is. Here it is. It's in this import instance. And again, if I go to show over here, let me do that again. And let me just reset this here. Okay, there it is. And you can see here it's a base cabinet, the rubber base. If I go to merge it and try to merge it with another style, let's say layer 0, I'll show you what happens in this particular case. So what happens here is it's going to report back that it's not going to be allowed, okay? This requires a manual fix. So again, the Revit API does not allow us to do that, but the nice thing is we can tell you, hey, you need to manually fix this. Okay, in case you were wondering what that stuff meant. All right, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to uncheck imported styles. All right, and that's just going to allow me to focus on kind of the main object styles. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just select, let's say 0 through maybe plan rep below, okay? And I'm going to do an analysis. So one of the things I want to mention, or as I mentioned before, I should say, is we are literally turning over every stone. We are trying to figure out where these styles are being used. If you went in and, let's say, wholesale selected everything and hit analyze, it could take a little bit of time for Revit to do that, right? So we're waiting on Revit right now to report back, hey, I'm being used here. I'm being used here. You know, keep that in mind that I like to do these things kind of in chunks. While Revit kind of crunches away. Again, if you do the whole thing, it could take quite a bit of time. But you can see here, even for 44 and trying to look at where these are being used, this is actually going by pretty fast. Okay, so now we actually have a report. What I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck the not analyzed. And what that's going to do is it's going to filter this list by the elements that have only been analyzed in this case. Okay, and then what I'm going to do here is uncheck used once again. So in this particular case over here, what I like about this is since these are not being used at all, these have been analyzed and they're not being used, I could say, you know what, I don't want any of these. Let's just go ahead and wipe these away from the project. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically do that whole purge for you. Okay. And the nice thing about this is I have full confidence that none of these elements were used at all in my model. Okay, and one of the things I want to point out to you is when you come to like the object styles dialog box and you come in over here and you start looking at these things, you're like, I don't know if this is being used or where it's being used. I'll go ahead and, you know, delete it. And it says, are you sure you want to delete that? And the answer is, I don't know. Is it really being used? Well, that's where StyleManager comes in handy. It does report whether or not it's being used. All right, I'm going to check used here so that I can just filter my list back down to the elements that are being used. Okay, let's go ahead and let's just take a look at a couple here real quickly. This is kind of a common scenario. You could see over here, I have two subcategories that are very similar. One of them is elevation and the other is elevation, but I could see there's a little bit of a difference with the dashes, and that's really the issue. Our company standard says this is the style that's going to be used. This is the one that is not going to be used. Now, one of the things I want to point out to you is I'm going to merge this, and we're going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of merging. So let's go ahead and merge this with this style over here. And what that's going to do is it's going to do that merge and purge that I was telling you. So we're going to come in over here, and it's going to take this family, this casework, and it's actually going to open it up quietly in the background. It's going to do the swap out or rename of the style and reload it and remove the style that is no longer needed. Okay, so we do all that pretty quickly in the background. I want to just point out to you that it does not save these changes back to your server or where it came from when you loaded it up. It's all in the project. All right, so keep that in mind. Same goes for your templates as well. A lot of times people preload families. This is a good time in your templates to clean them up before people start their projects. Now, one of the things I want to point out to you with regards, to merging, be aware that whatever you merge it into, whatever family or whatever view was using that style, it's now going to be adopting the new style over here. So it's going to get the new projection and cut based on what you merged it into. So always be aware that if you had something that had a really heavy line weight or a different color, and you merged it into something that has a thinner line weight and thinner color, whatever was assigned to that style, that's going to get the change. Okay, so you very much want to keep that in mind when you're doing your merging. Okay. All right, so that's a little bit of that process over there. I'm going to just do one more over here. I'm going to just take this, let's just this one right here, and notice there's a group over here. Let's just go ahead and try to merge this into, let's say the plan rep below. So let's see where that is. There's the casework plan rep below. I'm going to merge that. And it's going to take just a moment for it to do its merge. So again, it's going to take these families that are using that style. It's going to open them up. It's going to do the swap out and clean up. And then it's going to do the purge. All right, so let's just wait for this for a moment. Okay, so what it was able to do is it was able to fix all the families, but it was unable to do the groups. And the reason why it was unable to do the group is because groups require a manual fix. Again, for those of you that try to go in and fix groups and you try to shove, changes to it, Revit doesn't allow you to do that, right? So this is a Revit API limitation. The good news is we are telling you right here that for the groups, it does require a manual fix. If there was a way around this, we would certainly make it happen. Some families, or I should say some groups, do allow you to do some fixes on the spot. It just depends on the type of group and the type of content that's in that group. But most of the times, you have to manually fix it. So just kind of keep that in mind in this case, that I will have to go back and actually manually fix that in this case, but the rest of them did get taken care of. All right, so let me just go ahead and kind of check these back over here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is let me just go over to line styles, line patterns, and fill patterns. And one of the things I want to point out to you, probably immediately notice right here that we have some color coding. And without even doing an analysis, we were able to find duplicates. And so if I put a check over here, what we're highlighting here are all the duplicated line styles or line patterns or fill patterns. And as I click on each one of these, you could see these are where the duplicates are. The names are different, but the line weights and the colors and the patterns are the same. And you can see there's a lot of them here, right? So for example, if I double click on lines 0, there are 148 uses of that. That's a lot, right? And so again, I may want to merge that with another style. And for this example here, I'm not going to do the merge, okay? But I just want to kind of point that out to you that these are all the same. The other thing too, if you're wondering here, the ones that are in italics, these are hard-coded built-in styles. And so we really try to differentiate the hard-coded built-in styles. You saw under object styles that CAD imports were in bold. Those are not built in, right? But these are built in. So we're trying to keep a level of consistency over here. We won't be able to delete, this line style. You can see over here, if I do an analysis, I can't delete that line style, right? That's hard coded, but I can certainly take other of these styles over here and merge them into lines beyond if I want to, and remove, let's say, line 0. Now I'm going to come down over here to lines 1 and double click on it, and medium wide lines. And you can see over here, medium wide lines is taking a little bit longer. Now, take a look at this. This is why this is really important to use a product like StyleManager in your project templates and in your view templates, is because, take a look at this over here. You can actually have line styles assigned to view templates. That's pretty weird, right? And we've found that if you've done, let's say, some line work information, let's say in a view, and then you say make a template from that view, Revit actually holds on to that and will actually capture that, even though you can't see that information in your view template. So keep that in mind, that yes, this is the reason why it's important to run a product like this in your templates and in your projects, is because we want to make sure this kind of stuff does not show up. You can see here there's quite a bit of usage, 1,004 usages of medium wide lines. Now, one of the things I want to point out over here is you see lines 1 has 0 uses. Watch what happens to this lavender color when I delete this. When I delete this, and it says it was removed because it wasn't being used, I get lavender reassigned to some new lines. And because I've isolated duplicates, this is a randomized color pattern, so you can't change it. Again, we've just kind of by default assigned a series of colors, shall we say, to the duplicates. So you can see here, as I did object styles and line styles, that the process is essentially the same for line patterns and also fill patterns as well. So let's take a quick look at fill patterns and materials, and then we'll get back to the slide deck and call it a day. I want to point out something that you probably immediately noticed that's really weird, and that's the solid fill pattern. Again, even though we saw some duplicate information and stuff being assigned to view templates, right? That's pretty weird. You can also have duplicate system-based patterns. So remember I said something about like poor programming, right, or poor code writing. This is one of the ways in which you can get this information to show up in your models. And take a look at this over here. If I, let's say, even just double click on this first one over here, there's actually 9 usages. And the ones with the asterisk over here represent the fake ones, okay? I like to call these the fake ones. These are actually not the real built-in solid fill pattern that comes with Revit that's hard-coded. And you may say, well, Sash, prove it. I say, absolutely, I will prove it. If I come to additional settings and I come to fill patterns, let me just show you what I'm talking about. There's only one solid fill. And if I even type in the word solid in here, I only get 2 patterns, the hard-coded one, which you cannot delete, and then some other one here called solid surfacing, which I can. If I come over to model and I type in, solid, I don't see anything there. So you're probably saying, well, Sash, how are you showing so many of these when there's only one of them showing here? Well, let me show you where we discovered that you can find all of these. I'm going to come over to view, and I'm just going to make a new plan view. So let me just make a new floor plan, and I'm just going to duplicate something based on my first floor level. The reason why I'm coming here is I have some view templates assigned to all my floor plan views. And what I want to just do is come over to the color scheme. And let me just hit the none button over here. And I'm going to look at rooms. And the reason why I'm picking rooms here is I want to look at the fill pattern assignment for the color scheme. And take a look at what happens when I scroll. Yep, believe it or not, if you've never paid attention to this, this is actually real, okay? Yes, that's a problem. This came from who knows what. It was probably more likely some bad programming that duplicated a solid fill pattern instead of using the system one. And then somebody accidentally assigned that solid fill pattern, or whatever program was using that fake solid fill pattern, that's what it was actually using. So again, this is a great opportunity for you to come in right now and clean up your templates and clean up your projects and merge them with the real one, which is this one right here that does not have the asterisk. Okay, and I'm just going to do one more quick one and then we'll close this out. Let me just show you materials over here. For those of you rendering buffs, what I want to just keep in mind is you want to keep these streamlined in your templates and in your projects, okay? And again, there could be a lot of materials in your projects. Those coming from loaded family content, especially from manufacturers. It's a good idea to, double click and start looking at these things. You can, again, select many of them and analyze them if you want. Let me just take a quick look over here to show you, for the objects, for this particular one here called Glass Clear Smooth, it's being used in the object styles dialog, right? And so what we're talking about is if I come over to manage and I come over to object styles, and you can see over here, it says site, civic door windows, which is kind of an interesting one. If I come over here and just look at civic door windows, we can see over here that this glass clear smooth is being used over here, okay? And so again, it is being used in the object styles as well. One of the things I want to point out to you that you need to be aware of, when you merge things like materials, and I mentioned this before with line styles, right, and object styles, whatever you merge it into, whatever view is set to use these particular object styles, they're now going to get the settings and the look for whatever new material you merge it into. There's no, let me pick the differences. It's whatever you merge it into. So if I merge it into, red, dark, smooth, whatever rendering or whatever view or whatever object style was using these three over here, it will now get these new settings. So just be aware of your merging, okay? And same thing with your templates, right? Get these straightened out first and foremost in your Revit templates, okay? All right, we're just about done over here. I want to also show you one more over here. Let me just come over to this AccuRender and let me just go to like gray, medium, smooth. Again, imports and families really start making a mess of things. And what I'm talking about here, once again, is if I come to object styles and I come to imported objects over here, we're talking about the imports and families, right? And you've probably seen that before. It's right over here. And again, these styles are being used. If I look for L1737 glass, here it is. And we can see there's the glass tinted gray. Okay, so again, if you want to merge it or delete it, it's really up to you, but at least we know that these are being used in these imported styles. The last thing I want to mention here, I'm not going to do any analysis of these, is when you are managing like filters and view templates and scope boxes, what I want to point out to you is we do an analysis of filters to tell you where they're being used. If you decided that you want to merge these into another filter, whatever the filter assignment was for any view. So let's say the floor plan view, I had a filter in there that was set to red with a dashed line. When you merge this into that new filter assignment for that view is going to get the red dashed line. We're not going to just wipe out all those settings. So just be aware of what you're doing. So again, for your Revit templates, if you're setting things up for mechanical, right? So a lot of mechanical, electrical, plumbing will color code their families based on, let's say, systems, right? Using filters. Or maybe architects and interiors folks want to color their or label their 1 hour rated walls or their 2 hour rated walls based on a fill pattern style. Be aware if you merge that with another filter, it will keep those colors and patterns. It's just going to reassign it to a different filter. And one of the things with view templates that we do is we automatically report their usage. So, for example, tells you where it's being used, in these views. Revit only tells you that a view template is used. It doesn't tell you where it's being used. So, same thing if you merge view templates. We're just going to reassign the view template to that view. We're not going to change any of the settings within there. And the same goes with scope boxes. We can look at where scope boxes are being used, and if you merge it with another scope box, whatever view was used in that old scope box, it'll get reassigned to that scope box. And that also is the same with grids and levels that are assigned to scope boxes. So you could see here, the process for analysis and merging and purging and deleting is the same no matter what the style is. So I'm going to come back over here and just finish out with a couple of slides. If you want to check for updates, again, look on our website here. We'll be publishing an update soon to StyleManager. And also, if you do want to submit a feature request, be sure to go to the little arrow next to the help file and request or submit a feature request over here. And on our website, in all of our products, we have a request over here. Also, we just had a cool BIM Thoughts, for those of you that have attended BIM Thoughts before. They did a really great podcast on StyleManager just recently, where they put it through the ringer and really had some nice things to say about it. They really like the interface, the workflows, so be sure to check out that link as well. And you can also find us online at ideatesoftware.com. You can follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn and so forth. So with that, before everybody goes, Richard, do we have any questions that the audience has that we want to address?
Yeah, there have been quite a few questions, but I think just in the essence of time, one that I thought was really good is someone asked about refreshing the results. They weren't sure how to do that, and so that may have been easy to miss back in the user interface, that there's a little refresh button. So I pointed that out, but I thought maybe you could talk about that exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So, whenever you do like an analysis over here, let me just, let's just do this here. I'll just come back real quickly and let's just maybe say detail items hidden. If any point in time you need to do a refresh of the list, and this usually is very helpful when you do an analysis and a merge. A lot of times it's a good idea just to do a refresh. So a lot of times, we can do the refresh for you. But sometimes if you do need to I guess refresh the look of it, you can certainly hit that button over there and it will do a refresh for you.
And then another question that I won't, it's probably complicated to answer. I won't get into it too much, but there was a question just about line styles and with CAD imports. And the answer, my answer to this gentleman was really, it depends whether the CAD import is fully exploded. So there are different things that you can do with StyleManager depending on if it's just let's say been imported, if it's been partially exploded, or if it's been fully exploded. So there are different methods. That's basically the answer to the line styles.
Absolutely. Going back to like the imported styles over here, let me just check this real quickly. Give it a second here to kind of refresh that information. When we come over here and, we do a show, gotta let it just do its final over here. When we do a show over here and it's selected, what Richard's talking about is this partial explode and full explode. So a lot of times if it's just in its natural state and we're showing you the layers in there, we can't do a merge, right? That's because that's a CAD file. Merge is not supported. It's a Revit, issue. If you do a partial explode, a lot of times what you'll get is like maybe the blocks that are still CAD files, right? But if you do a full explode, Revit will just blow all those things up into basically new styles that find their way into your projects. And so at that point, you should be able to do a merge, right? I try to avoid CAD imports at all costs, regardless, just because they do find their way into the projects and they really do start making a mess. But with a full explode, when those things are completely blown up to the point where they're no longer DWGs and they just become individual line styles or line patterns or fill patterns, then you should be able to do the merge unless they're like in groups where maybe a group isn't going to allow you to do that, but for the most part, you should be able to do that.
And one last thing, I know it just because it's a passion of yours, Sash. There's been two requests for showing unused parameters, and so it's a great request. We're not able to do that yet, but I know that that's a passion of Sash's as well. So I'll make sure that gets logged in the system.
Absolutely, so much so that next week and the week after that, I'll be doing a parameter primer. We're going to kind of do a deep dive into Revit parameters and talk about when you should use certain parameters. So absolutely, having that as a feature in here would be pretty awesome. And even just beyond unused parameters, maybe we can go a little further with that. So one of the things I want to point out to everybody, when you close out of this go-to, there'll be a brief survey. If you can fill it out and give some feedback for today's presentation. I apologize, we went a little over time, but I always like to get a little more under the hood and show you as much as I can. But also, if you have any feature requests and also requests for future webinars, we definitely want to hear from you on that. So keep us posted and fill out that survey. Richard, any final thoughts or questions that we should answer?
No, I think that was the majority. I mean, there was always, this webinar will be available on our website later on, and everyone will get a link to it. So that's always a standard question. And then I thought one that was also good was that, does StyleManager work with BIM 360? And absolutely, if the project is on BIM 360, it can work in that environment. I thought that was important to say.
Well, find us online. And be on the lookout. We'll be sending out a link to everybody when this webinar gets posted. I appreciate everybody's time. As always, you guys are awesome. Let us know if you have any questions. Richard Taylor, thank you so much for your help with fielding some questions. And we hope we got some new takeaways from this. And please reach out to us if you need some advice. Thank you all.